So good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for being here. I'm delighted to be moderating this discussion around the role of green hydrogen in the decarbonization of hard-to-abate sectors. I'm James Schofield. I'm the Deputy Director of the Industrial Transition Accelerator. Before we go into the discussion, just a couple of moments on the ITA, launched at COP28, an international initiative to support and partner with project developers of large-scale, deep decarbonization production facilities of commodities, steel, aluminium, cement, and chemicals, including green ammonia, green hydrogen, sustainable aviation fuels. We are co-funded by the UAE under the COP28 presidency and Bloomberg Philanthropies, and we're working here in the UAE, partnering with industries to help de-risk and remove obstacles to final investment decisions in those big industrial facilities. We're operating in Brazil, we're soon to be operating in Bahrain, and we hope very shortly also in Egypt and India. Now, green hydrogen is recognized as an essential component of the potential decarbonization for hard-to-abate sectors of those industries and commodity production that I just described, but also in transport. I'm delighted that we've got here, therefore, representatives on the supply side, the process automation, equipment side, the demand side, and within all these organizations, a degree of integration of all of the above. Green hydrogen, an extremely important vehicle and role to play in decarbonizing hard-to-abate sectors. In the pre-conversation, everybody expressed an interest to address the question of cost, being a #1 driver of bankability and uptake of green hydrogen. So with that, let me first turn to Mr. Almas Aidarov, General Director of Hyrasia One, to talk and address this question of cost, and on the demand side, whether people care whether hydrogen is green, blue, or any other color. Mr. Aidarov.
Thank you, James. And first of all, let me say thank you to the Masdar and the government of Abu Dhabi and UAE for the hosting us and for this special day of green hydrogen. We're glad to see all our colleagues and partners. Regarding our projects, we are a 100% German company and developing new projects. The name is Hyrasia One in Kazakhstan. We have designed and secured land plots for the total capacity 40 gigawatts now, and now we finished the pre-FEED stage and identifying the stages and trying to understand which scale of the project should we do according to the market. And as you said, the core issue is the price. If we see 2023, the whole world is consumed 97 million tons hydrogen. Mostly, it's of course a heavy industry, and less than 1% of this was a green hydrogen. Green, blue, something close to green or blue, low capture hydrogen. So there is no demand yet for the green hydrogen because of the price. Yeah, we see that the price of the gray hydrogen, like $1-2 USD for 1 kg, and the green hydrogen is 4, 5, 6 times higher now. And I believe that heavy industry is happy to use the low carbon hydrogen in any color, but because of the price, because of the availability, we couldn't shift our problems to the heavy industry because heavy industry has his own problems, his own market, steel production, and the world is changing, the market is changing, the same problems. And who will be cover this gap? In our view, we have to move from the both sides. I mean, using the gray hydrogen should be more expensive because of the policies, because of the carbon tax, because of the standards, availability to and capitals, etc., and low carbon aims. And from the second part, from the producer sides, of course, we have to reduce our costs because by scale, by new technologies, by developing electrolyzer. But we believe that it will be achievable the next 2, 3, maybe 4 years. We hope if the war issues will not developing and increasing again. And I'm just from China, and what we see, we understand that China now is more than 50% of the green energy market. And we see that in some products of the green, the China has achieved they shrink the gap between the price for the normal methanol or green methanol. We see that the difference in the price is less than 50% now. So it means that models is working and it's achievable. And of course, we have to find the new technologies. We have to unite it. We have to bring very cheap finance, especially for the capexes. Otherwise, we will face a new crisis with the prices. For instance, in our hometown in Germany, I mean, for the citizens, the cost of the 1 kilowatt now it's something around 30 US euro. In such kind of the price, the citizen doesn't care which color is it. You couldn't pay so lot of money for the energy, and if you will face this problem, you will again back to the old technologies. This is a problem which I think it's not new, all speakers talking about from the different cases, but the core issue, we have to solve the gap issues. And we're working together with our governments. Some governments is much developed. For instance, in the Kazakhstan, we still didn't provide a special legislation for hydrogen, for the green hydrogen. The hydrogen still in our legislation like a technical gas. This is the solution and what we are looking for in UAE, how the UAE and the Gulf countries is identifying the green hydrogen, especially in the list of the green energy. Thank you, James.
Thank you, Mr. Aidarov. Let me turn to Dr. Joe Pratt, CEO of Zero Emission Industries, a technology expert going all the way back to the US National Fuel Cell Research Center. Dr. Pratt, what are the most promising technology vectors to boost that demand and supply where the barriers to entry and uptake are lowest? And I know you have a particular focus on the transport sector, so please feel free to focus your comments on that sector.
Great, thanks, James. I think what we're seeing now is the places where hydrogen is already used in heavy industry, whatever the color is, are the easiest from a technological perspective to deploy green hydrogen. Hydrogen is hydrogen no matter what the color is when it comes to the end use. So something like ammonia production is pretty simple to transition over to green hydrogen if you have the hydrogen available. It's the same exact process. Mr. Singh may be able to talk more about the steelmaking technology needed to transition that. But any place, hydrotreating of crude, et cetera, it's a pretty simple technologically. If we look at, and I agree with everything that was just said, my belief is that hydrogen has to be much cheaper than fossil fuel, regardless of the color, in order for it to be adopted in energy and transportation. So we need to look at technically where are the areas that are adding cost to the hydrogen supply chain. An example is in transportation sector in the United States. We can make hydrogen for about $1.50 US at the gate using natural gas today. By the time it gets to the hydrogen fueling station where the Toyota Mirai or light-duty car fills up, it's $36. So where did that $34 come from? It's in the compression or liquefaction, it's in the trucking, it's in the cost of that fueling station, which is incredibly technically complex to be able to increase the pressure to 1,000 bar and cool it to -40. All of these technical steps add significant cost to the end molecule to the customer. One of the reasons why heavy industry is attractive is because of the volume. Number one, the more hydrogen you're using, the lower the cost. Second of all, you don't need that complicated infrastructure if you're fueling directly from a truck of hydrogen into, say, a tugboat. Maritime is one of the areas I'm pretty familiar with. And so you can eliminate cost out of that whole value chain and get to the point where maybe you're using somewhere around 5 tons a day of hydrogen in a ferry or a tug. Now you're cost competitive with diesel. You've eliminated some of the technical work along the way. You've increased your consumption on a regular basis. That's the way we're going to get to cost parity, or in my mind, we're going to beat the cost of fossil fuel. And when it comes to green hydrogen, that's the goal, right? We don't want to keep using gray or black or whatever hydrogen forever, but we can start with lower cost fossil fuel produced hydrogen today, get that out into the market in areas where it's cost effective, and then at the same time we can start transitioning the supply to green with some of the projects that are happening here in this region of using solar energy, and the marginalized cost of solar electricity is so small, be able to produce green hydrogen for less than we're making hydrogen from fossil fuel. So to me, that's kind of the process we're going to get there, and it's all enabled by the huge amount of offtake that is a surety from day one in heavy industry. I hope that helps.
Thank you, Dr. Pratt. Staying with the demand theme, and you mentioned Mr. Singh, Mr. Sanjay Singh, Director of Strategy at Jindal Steel, a different demand sector. In India in particular, how do you see the evolution and the take-up of green hydrogen and DRI technology within the steel industry, a massively growing sector for domestic demand for steel? Your views on the role for green hydrogen there?
Thank you. India is the second largest steel producer in the world. Produces to the tune of 150 million metric ton of steel annually. And all of us would know that steel making process is very complicated, very complex. And there is not one process which makes entire steel. There are three kinds of processes. There are three kinds of blast furnaces which are used in steel making: electric arc furnace, induction furnace, blast furnace. Electric arc furnace can use green hydrogen easily, but not blast furnace in a similar manner. And that's the reason you mentioned right in the beginning that we are a group of hard-to-abate sectors. And steel sector emits 2.5, I'm talking about India, tons of carbon dioxide per ton of steel. And it really requires that a very, very push from all quarters to be able to reduce carbon dioxide emission. So when it comes to electric arc furnace, then again, there are certain challenges. The most important challenge is it requires good raw material, where the Fe content of iron ore is more than 62%. And generally, the model which we are hearing in newspapers, that's the scrap-based model of electric arc furnace. And electric arc and scrap is available only in those countries which developed before the developing countries. In India, I'll talk about that. You'll see that there is a very strong correlation between the economic growth at any given point of time and the consumption of steel. In India, it is to the tune of around 7% both. 7% steel is growing and economy is growing 7 to 8% in last 7 to 8 to 10 years. And where does this steel go? It goes, 60% of the steel in India goes in construction sector. And so that cannot be really curtailed. And so the steel making in the same manner has to go on. And out of these three processes, the mainstream process is the blast furnace. And blast furnace is most difficult to green because it cannot absorb, it cannot take green hydrogen in the same manner electric arc furnace, because the electric arc furnace can use green hydrogen and can substitute gas. They are primarily based on gas, where there can be syngas and natural gas. So that can be substituted, and through that, the carbon emission reduction can be to the tune of 75%. But blast furnace requires different kind of strategy. But what is the main bottleneck in terms of greening steel industry? It is the investment. In India, we have a capacity of around 170 million metric ton. Government of India, I have been part of policy making for quite a substantial period of time. They have made an analysis a prediction that how much money would be required to, in terms of investment, to retrofit the current steel making facilities. I mean, that has been to the tune of $283 billion. So where this money is going to come from? So that is a major bottleneck, but it's not that. Governments are doing a lot of things. In India, we have a national green hydrogen mission, which aims to produce 3 million metric ton of green hydrogen by 2030. Then there is a green steel policy, which is going to push demand for steel. It is going to provide incentive to green steel and also put some kind of a disincentives for brown steel and the conventional steel. Similarly, about the scrap policy. So a lot of levers are in place. I can talk about my company, which I represent. We are going to produce around 4,500 metric ton of green hydrogen by end of this year, which will be used in steel making, which will be mixed with syngas in electric arc furnace route. RE capacity, renewable energy capacity of 3 gigawatt is going to be set up. So all the levers are in place, but this as such is a hard-to-abate sector, and it requires collaboration all through government, private, R&D. Only then a difference can be made.
Thank you very much. Let me quickly turn to Mr. Aljefri, Head of Green Hydrogen Investment Support at Masdar. We've heard about different demand sectors and the vectors that they can provide to grow demand. You're on the supply side, but also deeply involved in projects to then that will absorb that green hydrogen. What is your view on the demand dynamics that you see here in the region, a fast-growing industrial base and a construction sector? And where do you think the real potential is to further accelerate that growth, both of supply, but then with clear destinations in the demand sectors?
Thank you, James. So first of all, I want to emphasize the importance of having these kind of conversations which are focused on the sectors that really need hydrogen to decarbonize, and specifically heavy industries and long-haul transportation. Because for them, it's not a luxury to use hydrogen, but it's a necessity. And we look at the heavy industries and the need for hydrogen to decarbonize heavy industries. It's very important to highlight that right now we're living in a period of a global industrialization that we haven't seen since the first industrial revolution. And it's driven by the expansion of artificial intelligence and robotics. And that kind of expansion in artificial intelligence and robotics can be seen by few numbers. For example, in the next 3 years, it's expected that 20% increase in data centers spending on building data centers. Also, another number is that semiconductors manufacturing is going to reach $1 trillion in the market by 2030. So these market trends, you can also project that other industries that are also impacted by artificial intelligence or robotics are also going to expand similarly. So, for example, healthcare and education, all of these sectors are going to be impacted. Now, all of these sectors, when they kind of grow this much and the infrastructure requires a lot of investments, this also comes back to the heavy industries products demand in steel, chemicals, aluminum, refinery products. All of these are going to increase in the demand. Now, to solve that thing, you need an energy system that will be able to supply that demand from the heavy industries, but also you needed to make sure that you also achieve your decarbonization targets. And as we say, the solution is an all of the above solution, where you will need hydrogen, you will need carbon capture, electrification, batteries, and many other solutions. Hydrogen is very unique because, well, first of all, it's playing a role in decarbonizing many of these hard-to-abate sectors. And also hydrogen is a product that can be transported across regions. So you produce hydrogen wherever it's cheap, and then you transport it wherever it makes sense to consume. And that comes with opportunities and challenges as well. But if you look at the view moving forward, back to the question on the demand and the cost, currently hydrogen is still a nascent market, and the cost will go down with time, definitely. But in the short term, the rapid increase in the demand for these heavy industries is growing at a faster pace. And that gap needs to be bridged by policy and regulation, and that's very important to be implemented as soon as possible. And we see really good examples in Europe, for example, to decarbonize refinery and other specific heavy industries. Longer term, definitely the cost of hydrogen needs to go down, and there are kind of ways to go about that. First of all, you will need to kind of start small scale and then grow big. That's very important. You will need a lot of technological advancement, economies of scale, as I've said, as well as effective partnerships. At Masdar, we are committed to achieving our target of becoming a global leader in green hydrogen production. We are backed by our renewables energy business and presence, where we're targeting to reach 100 gigawatts of renewable energy by 2030, and we are already halfway through. Heavy industries is a specific area that we target in terms of production of green hydrogen. Last year, we have announced with our partners, Steel, a first of its kind green steel production pilot that will use green hydrogen, certified green hydrogen, to produce green steel using DRI, and that green steel is also certified green steel. So that pilot is an enabler for us to kind of advance this technology, which will basically reduce the steel production carbon emissions by 95%, but also it paves the way for us to basically expand on this area in the future as well with our partners.
Thank you, Ali. Now, turning to our last two speakers who kind of play an intermediary role on all sides to orchestrate, let me first turn to Joaquín Rodriguez Jadraque, apologies for the pronunciation, Director of Hydrogen and Clean Energies at Moeve, formerly known as CEPSA. You're on the supply side, but you're also very involved in trying to orchestrate the various aspects of the value chain to accelerate the deployment and uptake. Could you just give us some of your experience of what you see both in your work in Europe, around Spain, but also into Northern Europe, and more generally what that tells us about how to orchestrate the supply chain and value chain to accelerate the deployment of these energies?
Thank you very much. I also want to thank Masdar for hosting this event and the government of Abu Dhabi, because this is very important. After several years, we are realizing that there are many, many small details, and sometimes the devil is in the details on how to make this new industry happen. At Moeve, what we realize is that we should apply the same principles that we have been using for refining crude oil into different products. So hydrogen could be a final molecule to be used to decarbonize certain uses, but can also be an intermediate product to produce other green molecules. We talk about green molecules for heavy transportation. This is our business. We want to help our customers decarbonize. We talk about aviation companies, maritime companies, road transportation. And we see that if we connect different uses of hydrogen for different customers and different sources of, let's say, green electrons and even other green molecules like biomethane, we can significantly reduce the risk of the project, the project-on-project risk. So we can source electricity from different wind farms with PPAs, solar farms, biomethane, and I mean biomethane because there is another way to produce hydrogen, green hydrogen. It's not only electrolytic, it's still using what we have been using for several decades, which is the steam reformers. But replacing natural gas with biomethane, we can produce green molecules. Why we de-risk then the entire project? Because we have alternatives. Power can be used in the electrolyzer, but can be sold in the market as power. Biomethane can be used in the steam reformer, but can be also sold in the market as replacement of natural gas. Then in the production of hydrogen, we can use the electrolyzers, but we can use the steam reformers. So to help produce hydrogen very stable, baseload, what is required by the final user of the hydrogen, is important that we have all these mitigations. And finally, on the downstream, yes, we are producing this hydrogen to then use it as a feedstock to continue refining crude oil, but with a lower carbon content. So we will produce lower content gasoline and kerosene. But we are starting, and we are already undergoing construction of biofuels, so biodiesel, where we mix recycle oils with green hydrogen, or SAF, no, the sustainable aviation fuel, eSAF in the version that is purely green, no? And also marine fuels like ammonia or methanol. And why all this combination? Because again, we have several markets where we can sell the product. This helps also spread out the risk of the project into different off-takers. With this, we can make what we call hydrogen clusters or hydrogen valleys, because our refineries are also in industrial clusters. We have in front of us a fertilizer company, so they can be also an off-taker of green hydrogen for production of green fertilizers using green ammonia. We have steel plants. And why is this important? Because this helps scale up the projects to the size that is needed by electrolyzer manufacturers to go for gigafactories, also to improve the technology in the future. And also we can create the hubs that could be connected with infrastructures. What I mean is hydrogen pipes. These pipes will then create the opportunity for other projects to be developed at a later stage. And this is our plan. Now we are building 2 big, let's say, hydrogen valleys in Andalusia. And from there, we want to expand this into other locations where we see that this may happen and help creating this big industry around hydrogen.
Joaquín, thank you. Can I just have one quick follow-up question? Because of that role as an intersection of all the component parts, you didn't mention policy. How important is policy support in 30 seconds to 1 minute in order to allow Mathias enough time as well?
Well, I can say that policy should support these key projects. We have been recognized by the European Union as a PCI project of common interest. So we ask for a priority in permitting, so accelerated permitting, prioritize the infrastructure, connecting our projects to other projects, and also subsidies, to concentrate the subsidies in those projects that can really decarbonize immediately key infrastructure, key industries.
Thank you, Joaquín. And finally, Mathias, you're the president of Middle East and Africa for Emerson. Again, industry, infrastructure, absolutely central to enable these developments. What is the role for Emerson? What developments and acceleration or not obstacles do you see in particularly this region of the world?
Well, I think it's not necessarily our role. We're a technology and software company. We help anyone that wants to overcome challenges like the cost discussion we had before. We're happy to do so. I would say if you want to advance the general movement into hydrogen, you need pipelines, you need to recycle what you have, natural gas pipelines that can be reinforced and can be used. There's a big movement in Europe. I believe, the Evonik company in Germany has a big network that we can leverage. So they need to be enforced. Some investments are being done. I know the neighboring countries, Oman and Saudi, doing some. Masdar, I just talked to our colleague here. There's a imminent, I'm not sure it's an announcement, but an Oasis project is coming in the UAE in terms of, looking at pipelines and infrastructures and clusters for hydrogen. So yeah, we need to have some seed funding, some bold moves of governments probably to go in, not just incentives and carbon trading, but really, sending a signal with infrastructure. I think that's something that everyone needs. And then, in the end of the day, when there is need for technology solutions, will come into play as a technology company and help out. I want to make one comment on the cost discussion up front that we had. I think one lever to reduce cost, I don't know how we get from $1 to $35, that's really outrageous, I have to say, in that example that you gave. But there's technology that can be applied, certainly in the software space, what we call the digital twin concept. I think that's very well known in the process automation space. If people look into that more, then scalability is there, and automation can help along all those processes that all our colleagues basically were tapping into in the comments before. So I think we're happy to help. I think there's other companies around, but Emerson is here by foot to help with certainly the software and the intelligence in the whole process too. And we know from consultants that only applying the digital twin concept will save you 10 to 15% of cost. So that cuts out some of these dollars that you described. And then we find some other levers, and then we get there eventually. It would be a good thing.
Mathias, thank you. And thank you to everyone on the panel today. If you would join me in giving a round of applause, thank you very much